mural, which is an interpretation of Deer Park, a dreamy Deer Park with a lot of depth. It's very impressive what he has done. Then hovering in that forest are the 21 Taras. Then our standing Buddha statue that we've always had. And in the past, in front of that Buddha, was the 21, or rather, the main Tara statue. Now the main Tara statue has been moved to the side, since in the forest we already have the 21 Taras, hovering, floating, and like seeming like coming towards. Jambala, who is from the Yaksha class of beings, and Yakshas are associated with forests. And so the Jambala is now part of the installation of this forest. He is sitting on a big tree stump that we have had for a while. Then where Tara used to sit on the main shrine, now we have Kuan Yin, which in many ways is sort of a Chinese version of Tara. Except that Kuan Yin is Kuan Yin's gender is a lot more fluid than, as they say these days, a lot more fluid than Tara. Yeah, Tara is quite explicitly female. Then, of course, Buddha Shakyamuni is more explicitly, male. Kuan Yin is in that gender fluid zone. So we joke, like for West Asheville now, on the shrine we have also a trans Buddha. So here, Casey, here, let's see. So, right?
Cool.
So that's the main shrine. And then in that, next to the drum, there is where Jambala is. Yeah.
Beautiful mural.
Yeah.
When you were describing it, I was seeing colors and.
Yeah, no, it was, I told him, I said, make it abstract, black and white and grays, and so then the rest of the colors in here are different tones of that gray, white. So it all came together nicely. It's always good to have, to train in a backup plan in case one business doesn't work, I will go into interior.
My little short question was, I forgot now, do you live on that side of Asheville or the other side?
Yeah, I can walk here in under 10 minutes.
All right. Cool.
Yeah, it's sort of like you guys walking to the Capitol.
Oh, yeah, wow.
Yeah.
That's handy.
Yeah, like also crossing a street and then walk to the Capitol. A little less than Capitol, in fact. A little less than Capitol, not much more. Yeah. So.
Do you still have your Subaru?
Yeah, unless somebody decides I should have something else.
Well, I mean,
Although-
that was some wear and tear to have to go from one side to the other.
Yes, although these days it's impossible to get a new vehicle. I just took that in for servicing, and Subaru actually extended people's plans for a year because of pandemic. They say, and they hinted to me, they say, and when that year comes up, they're like, which is July for you, talk to us again. We might be able to extend it. Yeah,
Wow.
because all the usual right benchmark for 30,000, 40,000, no one's achieving those. So
Yeah.
yeah, so happy
Well, it
New
looks
Year.
really pretty. It looks really great and big.
Yeah, I think also we are more actively collaborating with other groups here, specifically Southern Dharma Retreat Center, which is an hour outside of town. They have been wanting a in-town presence and have not been able to figure out how to do it. So now we are sharing space here with them so that they can use the space. So they already have a lot of ideas to, like, for example, do the things that you guys are doing. In fact, like daily 7 a.m. sits, lunch sits, and because they have a broader network actually of people in Asheville that are part of, they have been around for 40 years. So they can easily staff it, so to say, just like the way that you guys have been able to do during the pandemic, having these different sessions. You have I know the grass is always greener on the other side, or looks greener on the other side. Likewise, you look over here, you think, oh, we got. I can tell you, I've seen both places. Our network is not as reliably stable as what EBS has. Just
Although
like
we have taken a hit during the pandemic because we closed. We're still closed technically.
yes, yeah, right.
Whether we're sort of at this moment trying to make sure we can reassemble all those timekeepers, posts and stuff. But
Right.
I'm sure
Right. And yeah, so whatever, like to compare to the pandemic times, of course, it's also, like we are also in the same boat. We're not exactly open yet either. But I think you guys have, my sense is that you guys have the same kind of network as Southern Dharma does have. Again, factoring in pandemic, which is also our reality and everyone's reality. So so I'm feeling now like Urban Dharma is getting to that point where it's going to be a much more community-run, community-supported Dharma center. I know, you guys have, fantasized about or thought how nice it would be, if we have resident teachers. But it's not necessarily the most ideal, because then everything falls on, then it becomes kind of like, oh, the teacher is around, people are around, teacher is gone, people are gone. So what EBS has is, learning to be independent and resilient, and I know that it has its own set of challenges. All of samsara is not satisfactory in one way or the other. It's just how we, configure our dissatisfactions.
right. Yeah.
But once we see that it's all about different configurations of dissatisfaction, now I feel here's the good news in case there's anyone new to Buddhism and say, gosh, these people are kind of depressed. January 2nd, they're talking like this. But rather, once you see the configured nature of this ever-present dissatisfaction, then the road to freedom is already opened up for you. Then in the midst of these different configurations, you're like, it's okay. It's pretty good.
Nick and I were talking the other day about, every Dharma center we've ever belonged to, probably because of the nature of Buddhism, there's always this spaciousness where you want someone to, when you walk in the door, you want them to hand you the prayer book and tell you where to sit and
Yeah.
show you this and that, you know, but that doesn't usually happen, you know,
Mhm.
you're just kind of like, you walk in and there's stuff going on and you have to, that's always been true. You have to sort of go, what the hell is happening here and how do I
Uh-huh.
fit that? And part of that seems to be because of the nature of Buddhism itself. And so we, as administrators, we keep trying to nail it down for people, you know, well, here's your handbook, here's your,
Yes.
but
Yes.
actually that's just not going to work, you know, it's
Yeah.
just going to be.
Right. Yeah, it's never going to work, but I will add my footnote, which is, and yet we keep at it,
Yeah, we have to try.
because we should not lose sight of that. I feel that my complaint about Buddhist centers, and I don't know if it is the nature of the Buddha Dharma, I think it's more cultural, is that we could do better at welcoming people. We could always do better at welcoming people. We could always do better at not having people feel like they just encroach on a private club.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
Definitely, we could do better. Certain things that we can learn from the mainstream churches, you know, or just churches in general. Take a little bit of that, you know. Too much of that is also like, aha. But take a little bit of that. So, like Christmas Eve, you know, I went with my godkids' family to the service at the Lutheran church, you know. So they have greeters and they have people, you know, ushers and, you know, pointing their way, and I envy that, you know, that they have, you know, they recognize that you are a fresh face and new, and they're aware and they're making sure, like, you know. And in my case, of course, I sat with, you know, people in their congregation, then immediately they recognize, okay, someone's taking care of him, we're good, you know. If we develop that kind of awareness, I think we can develop that kind of awareness. And then the best of both worlds would be to keep that spaciousness and not like feel like, you know, we are going to be, we will give them a good experience, which is then, yeah, it then is working from a place that is not based on what we understand how things happen, right? So in the realm of interdependences, we do, and we also recognize the limits of what we can do. So yeah, so I think, you know, we can do better, I think, at not making new people feel like they encroach on something. And sometimes it's hard because sometimes they actually turn up when, you know, we say you should not turn up.
Yeah.
Not that we're secretly like sacrificing a goat when that's happening, you know, in case anybody out there is wondering, you know, wait, what do you mean when they're not supposed to turn up? It's just like, you know, like when a group that's been meeting on a particular topic, or right, all on the same page, and then somebody new comes in, then we get all awkward. We don't know what to do with that person.
Yeah. Well, the other thing is that we're all on our own path too. And so we need that sort of semi-private space that you're talking about.
Yes. Yeah.
Of the initiated people, you know, we need to be
Yes.
able to get together and
Yes.
talk.
Exactly. So there's and when it comes to that
Right.
part, yes,
Yeah.
especially in Tibetan Buddhist context, you know, there is a proper place to be more private. And so, like our Wednesday night, Drigong Dhammakirti, we still don't advertise like, please come, you know, like we're not proselytizing
Right.
for people to join Drigong Dhammakirti. Yeah. Yes.
I never know where I am in these conversations because
Well, you know.
I don't ever remember, let's say 10 o'clock or 10 o'clock, anybody ever coming in except for one or, you know, two, I can't even think of the second one, it didn't feel just fine. I can't even remember anything except for that one time. And then the other thing, our 1 o'clock 12 step, I mean, when they walk in the door, John and I are there. And so is everybody else that's been coming, and they introduce themselves.
That's good.
I think we are very, very friendly. That's me though. See, I just see us as being really friendly.
Yeah, well, that's good. So this is not a complaint. It's just making a point.
I live in the altered
Yeah.
universe.
This is just saying that in general, Buddhist centers are awkward for new people. We have to be aware of that. And then, if I was in a Christian context, I would say, yeah, you guys, we're a little bit awkward for new people because we are too warm and it freaks people out. You need to chill it, cool it. Don't make people feel like you're trying to, convert their whole family at their, 20 minutes into them checking you out. So the last time I met with you guys, we were in the Gampopa chapter of things. Since then, of course, the group has, I'm sure, moved forward to the other chapters. Correct? And when we arrived at the Gampopa chapter, it gave us an opportunity to understand more, right, the historical context of Gampopa's time, Milarepa's time. It gave us more context. It gave me, at least, more of an opportunity to share with you what I understand, based on very good historical studies. They're not available in the form of very accessible books. They're rather esoteric in their own way. Academia esoteric, not Vajrayana esoteric, which can be just as esoteric. Academia esoteric books on the historical context. And I think I feel that, so I'm biased here because at heart I think I like history a lot, or rather the study of history, the study of the past. I like that a lot. I'm kind of a geek when it comes to that. So I'm biased, I know, in a particular way, but I want to make the case that we need to know the historical context to some degree, especially if we're going to read something like this, which originated sort of during that time, although this collection itself wasn't put together until maybe 300 years after that time. So even that fact, in the religious transmission, in the spiritual transmission of this text, that fact is not made clear. Yeah, that fact is not made clear, not made explicit. Maybe it didn't matter, when it was transmitted within Tibet. There were other cultural contexts and dynamics that made it unimportant for people to know that this collection, purportedly recording the inspired words and teachings of the great saint Milarepa, was not put together in the present form until a few hundred years later. But I think for us, precisely because our context is the context of the transmission of Buddhism, of Buddha Dharma. It's from Asia, in generally speaking, then more specifically speaking, from the Tibetan Himalayan context of the transmission of that into North America. So there are cultural dynamics that we should sort of be aware of. Why? Because I feel that if we're not aware of that, we have a harder time knowing what is the take-home lesson when we read chapter 40, chapter 41, what is said there, because everything was taught to a particular group of people in a particular moment, right? So this is the same with, I think, Christian theologians and Christian ministers having to make or interpret the Bible in ways that are, you could say, authentic or correct reads, right? So like a statement, right? For God so loved the world, that He gave His Son, right? Depending on how you read it, you can have a very narrow read of John 3:16, and you can have a broader read of John 3:16. I would say that the broader read of John 3:16, the broader read of John 3:16 is not a broader read that is willy-nilly. It's based on liberal, progressive theological schools and seminaries taking insights from historical studies. Yeah, of course, again, I'm biased. I trust like well done academic studies. Yeah, so then they say, I'll give a better example, like that often quoted, an eye for an eye, right? What was the second part? A hand for a hand, or?
Tooth.
Huh?
Tooth.
A tooth?
Tooth for a tooth.
Oh, a tooth for a tooth? I don't know. Yeah, an eye for an eye, right? So that have often been, these days, when that is brought up, right? Depending on who brings it up, right? On the maybe more conservative side, it will say, see, God says, one life for one life. It's just, right? Then they will use this as justification for, say, the death penalty. They say, well, God says so, right? Then, of course, the ones who don't like this kind of interpretation will often just ignore the statement, an eye for an eye. But now, based on historical studies, we now understand better that the possibly the most accurate historical context of a statement like that was, if you read the whole thing, if you understand when this was said, it is basically what were people doing? An eye of a wealthy, powerful family's person is to be compensated with 5 lives of a poor, unimportant family. Yeah, so an eye for an eye was a limit of how far you could go to seek justice. See, so it helps, like if we understand when was this said and for what purpose this was said originally, so that we have the take-home lesson. So our take-home lesson is, you cannot exceed what is owed to you when you want to settle a score. which is what our hearts tend to do. Our emotions tend in that direction. So God, so to say, if you believe the Bible as the word of God, God at a certain point set a limit and say, don't exceed that. And you cannot say, my eye is more important than his eye. And my life is more important than your life, My son's life is more important than your son's life. My daughter's life is more valuable than your daughter's life. So likewise here, in this chapter on Gampopa, when Gampopa finally turns up in Milarepa's retinue. So I talked quite a bit, those of you who were at those classes remember trying to give all of you a taste and understanding of what this early community was like. At this point, now, at the point when this material was compiled, put together, 300 years later, clearly already the word Kagyu has become almost an exclusive reference to Gampopa's tradition and Gampopa's spiritual descendants. 300-400 years after Gampopa and Milarepa, Kagyu has almost exclusively taken on that meaning. But in Milarepa's own time, in Gampopa's own time, the name Kagyu had a broader use. It wasn't a sectarian label. Kagyu, ka is the word that is used in reference to the Buddha's words. The Buddha's words. What the Buddha spoke is called ka. So like the collection of the Buddha's teachings is called Kagyo. Kagyo. Gyur is translated. The translated ka, the translated spoken words of the Buddha. Kagyo. And the Tibetan collection of the Buddha's teachings is called Kagyo. Tengyo is the other collection. Tengyo. Gyur again translated. The translated commentaries of the Buddhas. Tengyo. So Kagyo, Tengyo. If you go to a traditional Tibetan monastery, if they can afford it, they always want a set of the Kagyo and a set of the Tengyo. Especially the Kagyo, because they are the Buddha word. So I'm sure the Karen Rinpoche Center, has a set of the Kagyo, So ka, so that's ka. So when we say ka gyu, gyu is the stream, meaning not broken, like a stream continuously flowing. So it's also what we translate as lineage. So the lineage that the flow that brings the Buddha's word down to us, Kagyu. So during the time of Milarepa, during the time of Gampopa, Kagyu had a much more general meaning. Then when people at that time wanted to be more specific, to refer to a particular stream, so to say, then we encounter in this period, writings from this period, something like Atisha Kagyu. So there they mean, right, again, the flow of Buddha's instructions, the lineage of Buddha's instruction, as transmitted by Atisha. So it's called Atisha Kagyu. Now, Atisha Kagyu, that tradition, eventually they became associated with the specific term called Kadampa. Kadampa, Kadam. The Kadam lineage. So anyway, in this early community, all the Kagyupas today are basically spiritual descendants of Gampopa. And because of that, they are also spiritual descendants of Milarepa. But as I pointed out, Gampopa's spiritual pedigree is more than Milarepa. In fact, he was with Milarepa altogether maybe 13 months. All the great luminaries of Tibetan Buddhism, it's kind of interesting. It's just a general observation. All the kind of real famous luminaries of the Tibetan Buddhist tradition, they spent relatively short time with their main teacher. The ones who spend a long time with their teachers, they rarely are remembered today. So in the case of Milarepa, yeah, you all remember who, right? Who is the one who really spent all this time with Milarepa? Who is it?
Rechungpa.
Rechungpa, yeah. So Rechungpa figures, in this collection. Whereas Gampopa, whom we today say, oh, he was the main successor of Milarepa, he was only with Milarepa for 13 months. Prior to that, and after his time with Milarepa, he was mostly training in Atisha Kagyu or Kadampa. Why is it we don't hear so much about it now? Because at some point, right, 100 years later, the Kadampa as not just a spiritual lineage, but as an institution, right, with monastery, with land, with property, all of that, and Gampopa's spiritual descendants with land, with monastery, with patrons, with estates, and all of that, they became competitors. Yeah, in sociological terms, they were competing for the faith market. And so these terms got entrenched. Yeah, Gampopa's descendants kind of captured the term Kagyu, and then emphasized that Gampopa, Milarepa, and downplayed Gampopa and Kadampa, because those guys over there are the main, right? The main holders of this title, Kadampa. So then the Kagyupas kind of distanced themselves from their Kadampa identity. One could speculate, if during that time, right, now 14th century, so Gampopa Milarepa is 11th, 12th century. But if in the 14th century, Rechungpa's spiritual descendants were powerful, had land, had monasteries, had hierarchies, had patrons, and patrons often means local chieftains and kings, right? And local chieftains and kings, they have their ideas of what they want to do as well. So if we could kind of have an alternative scenario of history unfolding differently. There was a series on TV where, I don't know if any of you watched that one. I forgot the title. It's like maybe last 4 or 5 years. It's like the Nazis and Japan won Second World War, and the US is divided into two.
The man in the high castle.
Oh yeah, Man in the High Castle, right? Right. So kind of like this kind of fun, alternative. What would have happened if, things turn out differently? Yeah. So if we can sort of imagine, what if in the 14th century, give me a second. Come on in. Come on in. May, can you give them? Come on in. No, it's okay. It's okay. It's a Zoom class, very informal. Please. Good to see you all. Happy New Year. Welcome to the new space. Yeah.
I got a call from Sunday Market saying they're going to have a gathering here on the 6th.
Yes. Yeah. Please. And you all can sit and, hang out and make some tea and eavesdrop if you want. So happy to see you.
Television on the left side.
Please introduce yourselves as I continue. Yeah, so if the scenario was different, right? If the scenario was different, if Rechungpa's tradition was powerful, and Atisha's people were also powerful, then we have to wonder, what would Gampopa's disciples, spiritual descendants, where would they position themselves? Yeah, because you now would be more hesitant, to say, well, we are Milarepa's descendants, right? And then it'll be like, wait a minute, the Milarepa's main descendants. The Rechungpa people will say, we are the true McCoys, you guys, your guy only spent 13 months with the guru. So Gampopa's people would have to position themselves differently. Yeah. And in all of this, to me, I don't feel like, oh gosh, this is just politics. No, this is real life. This is people making the best of limited resources. And Tibet was a place with real limited resources. So like, Karen, you've been to Tibet. I don't know who else in this group has been to Tibet. The land itself is so stark, resources are really limited. And as a culture, as a tradition, Tibetan people use almost all their resources for the support of Buddhism. So given the limited resources and given the need to kind of support Dharma, no choice. There were competitions. Yeah, no choice. There were competitions. In a way, okay, now we know Rechungpa's tradition did not develop the way that it could have developed. So in some ways, we could also say, well, to Rechungpa's credit, maybe he never wanted to compete at all. He just say, that's not our deal. Because for sure, Milarepa, I'm not interested. I'm not interested. So in a way, you could say Rechungpa continued that tradition. So good for Rechungpa, good for Rechungpa's spiritual descendants, but not so good for rest of us, because we don't have a direct connection to Rechungpa's wisdom lineage. There was no institution, to transmit that. Yeah. Institutions are always human institutions. And I think when institutions try to claim God's authority or Buddha's authority, then, they have crossed off into the dark side. So once we recognize that institutions are human always, and humans are messy, humans are complicated, humans are confused, right? So then we don't expect that much from institutions. Yeah, but institutions, as long as they don't overstep their claims, they can be used, and they have been used to keep the spiritual transmission continuing. So today, we have the various Kagyus, we have the various Nyingmas, we have the various branches of the Sakyas, and then Gelug. Gelug is much more unified in that sense. They don't have that many branches. Of the 4 lineage that we know today, plus 5, the Chonangpa, the Nyingma is the most diverse in that, they have so many different institutions and institutional authorities. Yeah, the most, then second to that are the whole Kagyupa family. Sakyapa, their branches are there, and but most Western Sakyapas are not aware of the 3 main branches of the Sakyapas. But they are there. Then the most kind of like cohesive and the most institutionalized are the Gelugpas. Which is the tradition where the Dalai Lamas come from.
Dr. Lai.
Yes.
We might have covered this before, but would you just summarize the songs and the teachings that we hear that Rechungpa received, as well as a bunch of others, Heart Sons and so forth, are documented, at least in this treasury of songs, and I don't know what else is there. They were preserved over several hundred years.
Mm-hmm.
So there was some kind of lineage going on with Rechungpa, really. I mean, it's like after the death, and then Rechungpa students and so forth.
Mm-hmm.
And history.
But remembered by other people.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah. Yeah.
Not-
Remembered by other people.
Yeah, I mean, handed down. Anyway, if there was something intact going on.
Sure. Yeah, of course. I'm not saying that they're completely lost. If lost, we won't even know their names.
Yeah.
But traces of their existence continue.
Yeah.
Yeah, traces.
so is there no Kadampa now? Are there no Kadampas?
No independent Kadampa anymore. So Kadampa eventually, because of how successful Je Tsongkhapa was, and Je Tsongkhapa, founder of Gelugpa, he really saw himself as a true successor to the Kadampa. In fact, he used the term New Kadampa, not to be confused with the contemporary tradition calling themselves New Kadampa. Yeah, the contemporary New Kadampa is a splinter group from the main Gelugpa over that whole protector issue. Some of you might have heard. Yeah, so they are a splinter group from the main body of Gelugpas, predominantly a Western phenomena with one Tibetan geshe who was very influential. This is the modern New Kadampa, right? But that term New Kadampa was used by Tsongkhapa himself in the 14th century. And when he used that term then, he was, you could say, he saw himself as carrying on the style of practice of what he referred to as old Kadampa. And by Je Tsongkhapa's time, old Kadampa was already declining. Yeah, it was already declining. So then Je Tsongkhapa was able to kind of absorb, you could say, the charisma and the pedigree of the original Kadampas. So even though he used the term like we knew Kadampas, right? Eventually that term fell out of use and the term Geluk became the main label for his tradition. Ge is Gewa. Gewa means like virtue. Like we do our prayers at the end. Gewa di nurududa. Gewa means virtue. By the virtue of this practice, may all beings achieve Buddhahood. Luk is tradition. So the tradition of virtuous ones is the name of Geluk. Yeah, and for those reasons too, I think the Kagyupas in the 14th century also did not kind of try to wrestle the Kadampa pedigree into their side, because Tsongkhapa is doing it with his yeah. 499. Let's look at one of these songs. This is Gampopa asking. This is the chapter on Noble Gampopa, 41.
Not far from the beginning.
41, the very first, the second, I think you could say the second song is what I'm looking at. Where Milarepa asks him, what is your name? So it is said that Gampopa came, and it's very obvious he's an ordained monk, keeping his monk's discipline. But Milarepa immediately tested him by offering him a bowl of beer. So Gampopa hesitated. Yeah. So Gampopa was, fully invested in his Kadampa identity, which is one of the characteristics of that style of practice is an emphasis on monastic discipline. So Milarepa and his community, I think you could fairly say, have been critical of monks and their pretensions. I think what monks and monasteries represented for Milarepa's community is the rise of institutions. Yeah, I don't think it's Milarepa having a problem with true monastic practice as taught by the Buddha. The problem that Milarepa might have with monks and monasteries in his time is the rise of institutionalized religion in a way that is like kind of choking the spiritual life force. So immediately Milarepa wanted to test, like, is he going to be one of these arrogant monks who thinks that just because he shaved his head, wear robes, he's superior to us? So Milarepa, go drink this, right? Then he says, don't think too much, just drink. Gampopa had enough faith and devotion. So it says here, then afraid of missing the auspicious tendren, meaning auspicious interdependence. So Gampopa knew enough that Milarepa is not just a random person trying to get him to break his monastic vows. So then Gampopa drank the whole contents without leaving a drop. This signified, this kind of like created the auspicious interdependence where he will take in everything that Milarepa had to offer him. Knowing this and that he was a suitable vessel for all the key instructions without any left out, Milarepa then asked him. So Milarepa, when Gampopa did that, Milarepa said, okay, we have a basis to work with now. He's not coming here to be arrogant. Because in other places during this whole book, there were these arrogant monks who came to kind of challenge him, to debate him. But here he said, okay, what's your name? And he says, Sonam Rinchen. Sonam is merit. Rinchen is jewel. So the jewels of merit, his ordained name. Then Milarepa said, you have indeed accumulated great masses of merit, and you are therefore most precious among sentient beings. Playing on his name. He said, well named, Yes, you are indeed the precious merit. It says Milarepa said this 3 times. Then the Jitsun thought, whoever hears the name of my son will be liberated from samsara. But I should not speak of this now. So he had to care for the feelings of Rechungpa and his faithful disciples who have been with him through, thick and thin. Yeah. Then this monk comes, He says, I should not say this, I'll keep quiet now. The Jitsun then said to the teacher from U, meaning Gampopa. U is Uzang, it's central Tibet, this area. They are in Lapchi area, southern Tibet. So he said to the teacher from U, that you have come here out of faith for me is truly marvelous. I have no desire for your gold and tea. So Gampopa came with those as offerings. But my life story is like this. Then, interestingly, it said that not just Milarepa, but accompanied by Rechungpa and Shiva. So these, you could say, were the 2 closest disciples to Milarepa, Rechungpa and Shiva. It means peaceful light. Shiva is peace, is brilliance, light. That the 3 of them together, it said, sang this song of realization and welcome to Gampopa. In the unfabricated sky of Dharmakaya, clouds of unceasing compassion gather. Destined refuge and protector of beings, I bow at the feet of Marpa, so kind. So Milarepa always begin his songs, whether in a 4-line stanza like that or just 1 line, he recollects his guru, Marpa. Seated on my right is my son, Rechungpa. On my left is Shiva. Those on both left and right join me in singing. Laje, referring to Gampopa, which is the divine physician. Haje, because Gampopa earlier in life was trained as a doctor, like a Tibetan medical doctor. Then after his wife died, he became a monk. But then now there is the double meaning of the divine physician, as in now he is not concerned about healing the body, he's now healing the mind, liberating the mind. So Milarepa calls him Haje. Haje, now please listen to our song. Then together, the 3 of them sang. In the glorious and stainless pure realm were many who spoke highly of themselves. It says there are many that are amazing, but the 2, Naropa and Maitripa, are renowned in the central land of India and illuminate the central land of India like the sun and moon. the heart sun of these two father Siddhas, embodiment of the Buddhas of the three times essence, is the translator Marpa Lotsava. So here they give sort of Marpa's spiritual pedigree. Already here you can see, right? Naropa we immediately recognize because so many of the Kagyu lineage prayers is, Vajradhara, Tilopa, Naropa, Marpa, Milarepa. So the prayer of all the Kagyupas today, always, Vajradhara, Tilopa, Naropa, Marpa, Milarepa. Because every generation, you choose one name to represent that generation. I've pointed this out in the past. Like in these lineage prayers, in fact, we're not just like invoking and supplicating one person each generation, but the name of only one person is given really to represent everyone in that generation that had realizations, that has achieved spiritual stability. So often we only hear of Naropa in the Kagyu, but here in this song, he says the sun and the moon, the sun was Naropa, the moon was Maitripa. So Maitripa was an important Indian master as well. And in fact, when you study, when you read Marpa's life story, when he was in India and Nepal for 3 times, he went 3 times. It wasn't just Naropa, even though Naropa was the more involved of the two, he also spent a lot of time being trained by Maitripa. And today you can say Naropa's influence on the Kagyupa lineage is in the form of the yogas of Naropa, like practice of Tummo, practice of Powa, practice of dream yoga, practice of illusory body, such practices. And together with these, the more explicitly tantric or Vajrayana practices, like meditating on yourself as Vajra Yogini, meditating on yourself as Chaka Samvara, and all the other complex Vajrayana tantric practices. All these Marpa receive primarily, not exclusively, but primarily from Naropa. And Naropa also sent Marpa to go receive transmissions and trainings from other prominent Mahasiddhas in India and Nepal back in the 11th century. And among them, Naropa sent Marpa to go receive transmissions from Maitripa and to train with Maitripa. Now, what did Maitripa teach to Marpa? What we now identify as Mahamudra. So the Mahamudra teachings tend to be less complex, more kind of direct, more essence level, may or may not use tantric vocabulary, Vajrayana vocabulary, so much so that Gampopa spoke of Mahamudra as having 3, Gampopa later will talk about, there are 3 ways of practicing Mahamudra. He calls it Vajrayana Mahamudra, Sutrayana Mahamudra, and Essence Mahamudra. So Gampopa said, you can practice Mahamudra via the Vajrayana style. And that is to practice Tummo, to practice Powa, to practice illusory body, to practice dream yoga, all of that. Gampopa said, but you can also practice Mahamudra by just practicing shamatha and vipassana, but relying on the teacher's instructions. Then he also identified a style of practice that he called Essence Mahamudra. And there it's, what is that? It seems to be an approach to Mahamudra that use a little bit of Tantra, a little bit of Sutra, and sometimes seems like neither Sutra nor Tantra. But just the teacher's words and the teacher knowing when to say what to guide the student into seeing the nature of the mind. That's the essence Mahamudra. Now, all of this, especially Sutra Mahamudra and Essence Mahamudra, this is primarily what he learned from Milarepa. Tantric Mahamudra, primarily from Naropa. So here it says, Marpalotsava learned these two. Now, what it doesn't say here is Gampopa, prior to meeting Milarepa and after meeting Milarepa, also received Sutra style Mahamudra and Essence Mahamudra from his Kadampa teachers. Because Atisha and Maitripa, they were close. So from Atisha also have the same kind of Sutra Mahamudra and Essence Mahamudra approach. Atisha also knew Vajrayana Mahamudra because Atisha also trained with Naropa actually. Yeah, Atisha was a senior contemporary of Marpa's. And Atisha, of course, was Indian. Whereas Atisha came from India to Tibet, Marpa went from Tibet to India. Marpa first trip to India, he met Atisha on the border area. And he recognized who Atisha was. Atisha was a fairly famous Buddhist master. So Marpa recognized Atisha. And then Atisha tried to persuade Marpa not to go to India. He said, you just come with me. Turn around, come with me and translate for me. And can do a lot of good. And Marpa said, no. I need to go. I need to go see Naropa. In fact, and then Atisha said, it's hard to find Naropa these days. He has wandered off. He has left, the monastery. He has wandered off. Marpa said, no, I have to try. Then Atisha said, okay, I can't convince you. Then, okay, good luck. So anyway, continuing here. Because this song was sang by Milarepa, right? So of course there's no talk about Atisha and all of that. Yeah? Because he's chief of the mandala, Marpa, this fortunate one who ravishes the mind is renowned among the Dakas and Dakinis. Hearing his name, I could not bear it, and through great efforts I went to him, Marpa. As soon as we met, I obtained joy and bliss. Bowing at his lotus feet, I told him I needed the profound key instructions for attaining Buddhahood in this very life. My father Buddha, Marpa, also said, quote, there's an instruction that's like a mother, a guide, that in this very life cuts the continuum of samsara. This was taught out of the compassion of Naropa, unquote. Then Milarepa continues, since I was poor, I had no material things, but striving with my three gates, body, speech, and mind, I fulfilled my commitment, meaning I served my teacher devotedly. Through the compassion of he who knows the three times, because he knew my altruistic intent, with great love, he thought of me, Marpa thought of me. The key instructions of the 4 lineage transmissions I will teach without adding to them or taking away. This reference to the 4 lineage transmissions, right, is older than the 6 yogas kind of grouping. Because Naropa is said to have received the 4 lineage transmissions from Tilopa. In Tibetan, it's called Kabab Shi. Shi is 4. Bab is like flow. Again, flow, but a different word. Bab, descent. More than flow, descent. Coming down. Ka, again, the word ka. So Tilopa is said to have received 4 main transmissions. So this is how one way of talking about what Kagyu refers to. They say it refers to the Ka that Tilopa himself received. Kababshi. So then later, when the 6 yogas of Naropa, right, or the 6 dharmas of Naropa became prominent, various authors tried to fit the 6 into the 4. And say, well, in this one transmission, 2 things were emphasized. And somehow the 6 is worked into these 4. So the reference to 4 is an older reference. So here, Marpa said, the key instructions of these 4 lineage transmissions I will teach to Milarepa. So making this oath, thus he gave them to me. Now, in this age of the teaching's corruption, there are many adverse conditions. There's no leisure in this life. So without getting lost in conceptual knowledge, engage in the essential practice, he said, meaning Marpa said to Milarepa. In a way, Milarepa is making an admission that he never really studied theory. So this conceptual knowledge is talking about tantric theory. He never studied the formal tantric theory with Marpa. Marpa himself was an expert in that area. So it's not that conceptual knowledge is always wrong. This is just a tacit kind of admission that I never studied tantric theory, even though Marpa had that. Well, and so here we go back even 1 generation before, which is Marpa's main successor, as I've said many times, not really Milarepa, but this other figure called Lama Ngo. His full name was Ngo. Ngo is the family name. Ngo Choku Dorje. In fact, if you recall, when Milarepa first came to Marpa, Marpa refused to give him instructions. Again and again, Marpa just kept refusing. Then Marpa's wife thought, I will help this young man out, pity him. This young man is so devoted, right? And I don't understand why my husband is being so harsh. So Marpa's wife, Dhamema, sent Milarepa to Ngo Choku Dorje. And he said, Ngo is my husband's most impressive disciple. So you can go to Ngo, you know. I don't know why my husband is being so hard with you, but go to Ngo and tell Ngo that you were sent by Marpa. So Dhamema kind of, you know, told Marpa to lie and said, go to Ngo and say, Marpa sent me to you to seek these teachings, these instructions. And Dhamema even gave Milarepa some of her jewelry and say, you give this to Ngo. Because Dhamema knows, when Milarepa goes to Ngo and say, Marpa sent me, unless there is some proof, Ngo is not going to believe it. But when Ngo saw Milarepa coming with what he could tell was Dhamema's jewelry, and probably things that Dhamema put on her hair, you know, on a regular basis. That will serve as enough proof. So it's said that Ngo saw those jewelry and said, oh, okay, well, must be true, and gave instructions to Milarepa, but no result. So here is saying to us also, if you don't have chemistry with that teacher, chemistry is our modern word, karmic connections, mere transmission of information is not going to unlock what we call the blessings. The blessings depend a lot on karmic connection. So anyway, right? Ngo had all the tantric theory. Ngo also has the experience. So Ngo has both sides. Here when Milarepa says, so without getting lost in conceptual knowledge, engage in the essential practice, he said, my Lama Marpa told me that. So I never studied tantric theory. Yeah? Now, continuing. To repay the kindness of my guru, I cracked the whip of the fear of death. I cracked that whip on myself. So I did not waste any time. Then through the power of meditating with great diligence, concepts and bad omens, I made my friends. So he says, I didn't care anymore. Even like my practice not going well, I made them my friends. Meaning, you know, I didn't get discouraged when things didn't go well. But you and me, you know, we get easily discouraged. We face some obstacles with pursuing the Dharma, and we say, oh, no, that means I should not go for this. And yeah, you know, I do the same, you know, this is where we are. But Milarepa, extraordinary being, he was able to even take setbacks in Dharma pursuit as a friend. Concepts here means like mental superstitious gossips, which we ordinary ones, we have a lot of that, you know. But he said, I made all those things my friends. And not friends in a samsaric way, you know, but friends in the Dharma way. So concepts and bad omens, I made my friends. Because the three poisons' own nature is awareness. So like even the three basic poisons, confusion, attachment, and aversion, because their nature is actually the mind that knows. Because of that, the spontaneous presence of the three kayas was pointed out to me by my guru, Marpa, and I recognize. In order to transfer to qualified students all experience and realization, the lineage's blessings, the key instructions that include all that is profound, Teacher, I bestow them upon you. Now, Milarepa switches his attention. Until this point, he's talking about his own spiritual pedigree, right? And then now he says, so that you can continue this transmission, now I'm going to give all that I received from Marpa to you. Practice them and make the teachings flourish. Plaje, while keeping this in your heart, please don't be rigid. Just rest and relax. Just rest in the relaxed state. Now, remember, right, in Mahamudra, resting and relaxing isn't zoning out. It's not the rest and relax that we get when we get a good massage. This rest and relax, resting here means no contrived actions. Relax here means, present and open. Not absence, not mind checking out. Just rest in this relaxed state. The story of this yogi is just like that. We can speak about it slowly and thoroughly. So he says, we'll talk more. We'll talk more. But now gold is not agreeable for an old man like me. And I have no stove to boil your tea. So you just keep them. If you want to hold the Kagyu teachings, look at my conduct and practice like me. The teacher's question was answered in this song. So this is the first explicit instruction Milarepa gave to Gampopa. Thus he sang, "This is my welcome for the teacher," said the Jitsu. The Lord then brewed some tea and offered it. The Lord here refers to Gampopa, which the Jitsun enjoyed immensely. Then he said to Rechungpa and others, "We should offer the teacher tea in return. Go get some." He went off to get some tea and brewed it. "We need to add something," he said. The Jitsun added some cool water to it, and the tea took on a superior flavor. So here, some secret is given on how to make good tea. The temperature was too hot, so then Milarepa added some cold water, and then just at the right temperature, the tea tasted wonderful. Too hot, the taste doesn't come out. Too cold, the taste doesn't come out. Just the right temperature, then now it tastes superior. This is also, I read this as similar to a key instruction that Siddhartha got, right, on the brink of his enlightenment. He was practicing too tightly. Now, it said that he only ate 1 grain a day because he was practicing, extreme mortification, extreme sports, except this is spiritual sports. And then when he was a prince, he was practicing extreme indulgence. Then he overheard, right, floating down the river next to him was a teacher in a raft, a teacher of music instructing his students. He said, when you tighten the strings of this string instrument, a lute, it says, when you tighten the string, if you're too tight, no sound. Too loose, no sound. Each of these strings need to be tightened to just the right tightness. Then you can make beautiful music. When Siddhartha heard that, he understood. Extreme mortification won't work. Complete indulgence won't work. Just right. So here too is tea. Too hot, you cannot taste the flavor. Too cold, the flavor doesn't come out. Now, just right. It's related to the, don't be rigid. Then the monk from Jayu, Milarepa, Gampopa, the monk from Jayu. In fact, that time he was studying with his main Kadampa teacher, who is called Jayupa, meaning the one from Jayu. So he came, Gampopa himself also came from Jayu. Then when the monk from Jayu requested blessings from the Jitsun and to make a Dharma connection with him, the Jitsun said, whatever object of attachment you have, offer it to me in exchange for this blessing that you're asking. Then now Gampopa said, I have nothing to offer, he replied. And Jitsun said to him, you are hiding lots of gold on your body, but you claim to have nothing. Such a shame. What use is a blessing with no faith or key instruction? Oh, sorry. The monk from Jayu is not Gampopa. Actually, Gampopa had a companion with him. Yeah. So a fellow practitioner. Yeah. So that monk asked for a blessing. Yeah, sorry. So Milarepa said, you say you have nothing, you are hiding a lot of gold, in your robes. Such a shame. What use is a blessing with no faith or key instructions without any certainty? Further, you have come here for the sake of wool trade. Go on. You have no obstacles in your endeavors. So he gave a blessing, but he gave him a worldly blessing. He said, actually, you just by the way came to see me. Whereas Gampopa really came to seek instruction. See, from someone like Gampopa who came for real instruction, he said, I don't need your gold, I don't need your tea. Then this other monk, he's giving him a chance, and say, you make me an offering, I'll give you the blessings. But this monk said, oh, no, I don't have anything to offer you. But then Milarepa nonetheless gave him a blessing, mainly, okay, whatever worldly endeavors that you're up to, may it all be successful. Now go. Gampopa thought, when in the presence of the Jitsun, there is no place for pretense or hypocrisy. One needs to have a focused and present mind. With this, he never became separate from the perception of Milarepa as a Buddha. Then Jitsun said, teacher from U, now addressing Gampopa, have you previously received Abhisheka, meaning empowerment? Gampopa relayed that he had received some Abhisheka and key instructions from the precious gurus, from his previous gurus, meaning his Kadampa teachers, and told of how samadhi had arisen in his mind stream. He said, I also practice, I stabilize my mind this way, that way. Then the Jitsun bursts out, if you squeeze sand, you will not get oil. You will only get oil from mustard seeds. So he's saying, whatever you received before, right? They are sand. Now, meditate on my Atong Chandali, Tummo. Meditate on the Tummo that I'm going to teach you. Then you will see the essence of mind. For this practice, I'm not saying that the Abhishekas you received before are unqualified. But because of the great power of Tendril is involved, you must have the blessings of my tradition. So here Milarepa is a little bit more generous. He says, I'm not saying that the empowerments you receive from your previous teachers are bogus. That yes, they fulfill the technical requirement of empowerment, but without the blessings, Without that karmic connection, those things that you receive are not going to produce the results you're looking for. So I will now give you my blessings because your karmic connection is with me. Then, in accord with the tradition of the whispered lineage, with the Sindura Mandala, Milarepa gave him the blessing of Vajrayogini, meaning the empowerment of Vajrayogini. Sindura powder, Sindura is a type of powder, a red powder. So creating the mandala of Vajrayogini with this red powder is a reference to a way of giving empowerment that is simplified. He was given the key instructions, and excellent experiences arose from him through meditation. Recollecting the instructions of his previous gurus, Gampopa did much analysis of the view, meditation, and conduct in order to cut through doubts and uncertainties toward the Jitsun. Then afterward, he requested the key points of view, meditation, and conduct directly from Milarepa, and the Jitsun cleared all remaining uncertainties. So here it shows, right? Having then received this empowerment of Vajrayogini from Milarepa, he then went back to re-evaluate everything that he has received from his previous teachers, and then all those things started to work. Yeah. So here, if we read carefully, we see that, now he's able to really fully absorb what he had received earlier, but didn't fully grasp. Then there were some other uncertainties that he couldn't work out himself, that he consulted with Milarepa, then all became clear. After that, Milarepa sang the song of realization on the greatness of the secret mantra in general, and in particular, the practice lineage. Yes, so today we stop here. But it really shows us, so now, his prior Kadampa training is starting to bear fruit because he needed Milarepa's blessings. That's where his karmic connection is. He needed Milarepa to unlock the tap. Now the tap can flow freely through him. And so this devotion has to come in a natural, cultivated way, but natural, not contrived. So Gampopa was ready.
I have to ask you, Dr. Lai. Mm-hmm. Well, this is just so wonderful, this teaching. Mm-hmm. What can we offer you?
Tea and gold would be good. I mean, really nothing, whatever, like randomly I talk about Dharma projects, if you all want to help, I'll be very happy to, not so much offer to me, but participate, in this auspicious interdependence, as I said, then as I always say to everyone, you don't take for granted your local Dharma center. That is your primary responsibility, because it's not just for yourself. It's for all the beings that in that area need that physical Dharma center to practice. So if you can help the Dharma center where I am most appreciated, but not at the cost of your immediate local Dharma center, because that's where. In a way, to repay what I'm doing, if there's a need to repay, your immediate reference point is your Dharma center.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
And yeah, so then otherwise, yeah.
Well, I just want you to know it's very, very, very beneficial. Really, really.
Okay, good.
Thank you.
It's feeling good now. Urban Dharma, this move. There's still some things to do at the old place to clean up the old place. Then people are doing that while I'm gone. I leave for Guatemala well, I drive out of Asheville tomorrow in the afternoon. My flight out of Charlotte, I'll go spend a night at this old colleague's house in just outside of Charlotte. Then bright and early, if there are no flight cancellations, which seems to be the style of flying these days, then if no cancellation, I fly out 7:50 on Tuesday morning. I'll be in Guatemala until the 20th of January. Then from there, I'm asked to go to Mexico City to do a program for the Tibet House in Mexico City.
Wow, that's
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah, they want to do a program. Of course, they have to take all the precautions, and so. But I think like sure like Omicron is very spreads fast, but at the same time I think we have enough evidence now. Omicron comes and goes very quickly. I think in the US it will peak middle of January and then it will go down. Same probably in Mexico. So also I think like Buddhist gatherings. So this is where Buddhist coolness is a good thing. We are not passionate types. We don't run up and hug. And although Latin America, there's the cheek thing. So they have to be more disciplined. Like no, don't do that. So they have a gathering space annexed. He says that full capacity is 180 people, but for this, they're going to keep it to 60. So then, if we are quietly gathering, then it's not a super spreading. As in, we're not singing hymns at the, top of our lungs. And, right? Coolly, I was like, now meditate, calm mind. Not much spread, but it'll be masked and everything as well. So I'll do that that weekend. 20th is a Thursday, 21st is a public talk, 22nd, 23rd, it will be kind of full day program. After that, they would like me to visit one or two of their satellite centers, but I'm not committed to that yet, so I don't know. So I'll come back sometime late January to Asheville. Then middle of February, I had planned already a retreat in Costa Rica. So I'm going to go there. That will be 15th to the 22nd. After that, 4 or 5 days, I'm going to stick around in Costa Rica. There's some things to do, as it turns out, in Costa Rica. Then at the end, on the 27th, I fly back to the US. Then the plan is to go back to Malaysia no later than March 10th, since my nephew is having his wedding party, which has been delayed for 2 years, on March 25th. The wedding party. Then I'll stay through to about maybe middle April. then I'll come back to the US because end of April, I am supposed to go be part of a Sand Mandala construction at a college in Salt Lake City. I like visiting the Mormons. I don't know if I will enjoy living among Mormons, but I do like visiting Mormons. They get religion. And as a culture, they are respectful to other religions, even though, yeah, of course, you know, their goal is to convert the world, but they do have a genuine respect for other religions. I mean, we're not talking about fringe Mormons, but mainstream Mormons, they have a genuine respect for other cultures and religion. So I look forward to Salt Lake City, which has a state religion, is Mormonism. You know, there's no separation of church and state in Utah. I've mentioned before, of all the universities that we have gone to make Sand Mandala, my experience is that when we went to Utah State University, that was the one place that I felt that people understood what we were doing in religious terms. We went to Vassar College, we were at Asia Society, you know, the progressive left, so to say, you know, don't get religion the way Mormons get religion. In other places, you know, people are respectful, but it's experienced through the lens of art.
So, Dr. Lai, we want you to put us on your calendar at some point, because
Okay.
at this point, EBS only has one retreat scheduled for 2022, and it's in October.
Okay.
Then teacher Flint Sparks is coming.
Yeah. So right. So I think now, so let me continue schedule quickly. I finish in Utah at the end of April. Then, according to the plans, which of course COVID is the main factor, I'm supposed to be in Indonesia for a month after that.
Okay.
So all of May. So sometime June, I will be back in the US again. So you can think, you know, between June and October.
Okay. Well, it's really up to you. Whatever you want,
Yeah,
tell us.
yeah, right. So I think would be ideal to do something between June and October. And, you know, yeah, I think
Okay.
sometime in the summer might be good. Yeah.
Dr. Lai, aren't you already doing something, Southern Dharma, August 4th through 7th?
Probably. I gave them some dates. I don't remember. So yes, so that is out. I'm glad somebody knows because I don't.
Okay, well, let's look at July, okay?
Yeah.
Let's look at July, and we'll just sort of pencil July and talk to you more about that, okay?
In a way, August 4th to 7th, right, Joyce?
Right. That was tentative on their schedule.
Okay, good. So then, like
Oh,
the weekend before or the weekend after might be good.
okay.
And I have more reasons to tie me down to the United States in that cluster of weekends.
Okay.
If you give me too much space in between, I might run off.
He's gone. He's a goner.
That's right.
Yeah.
Okay, well, we have to stop this now pretty soon.
Yes.
Because,
Yes, I run.
I'll get back to you about the August dates, okay?
Yeah, so it could either be late July
Yeah.
or after 4/7, without too much of a gap in between. Then I can't run out of the country. I will commit to Southern Dharma or commit to, you know, EBS.
Okay. Okay, great. That's very helpful. Thank you.
Yes, and summer is a good time to be in Asheville, so I would like, you know, to be around. And if conditions allow, we will also probably do a more proper opening of this new space sometime during that time.
That's great.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And then when conditions allow, at some point you all can think about Sand Mandala at EBS too. We can arrange that.
Oh, that would be fantastic.
That'd be
Whoa.
great.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So think about, I'm planting a seed, we can think about that.
Okay.
It can be the same time as when I do a retreat, or it could be the program is Sand Mandala. It all depends on COVID, how much or less of it at that point, And it could be a way to restart everything as well for EBS. Sand Mandala usually attracts, traffic. Yeah, we did that in April at Randolph College, and everything was fine. Everyone masked, making Sand Mandala, with or without COVID, wear mask.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Very good.
Yeah.
Thank you so very much.
Okay.
So we won't see you for a while, it sounds like.
I will make an effort, because where I'm going, as long as internet is stable, as long as, Sunday morning, usually people are lazy, not like you all, then we can do program,
Okay.
I'll let you know. I just want you to know I'm not forgetting that Sunday, if possible, I will join. It's just too many things going on. And then this next part is more like internet connectivity issue. I'm in Guatemala. I'm not in the city. I'm out by the lake, Atitlan. Those of you who know Guatemala, and internet, I don't know yet how stable it's going to be.
Okay. We'll always be here whenever you want to join us. So.
Thank you.
We're ready for you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Have a good Sunday.
Bye. Stay safe.
See you all
Thank
soon.
you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. And we're out of here.